Oh, is it conceivable to you that you have unresolved emotions that could be holding you back from what your heart really desires? Or do you sometimes find yourself saying something like, I thought I already dealt, but here it is again?
Mm. Welcome to part 2 of our 4-part mini-series. Today's topic is alchemizing emotional pain into empowered choice. It's a big topic, Laurie.
Yeah.
One I'm excited for us to talk about today, and I would love to have you dive in and share some of the problems that you've experienced and seen from clients in this area of dealing with our emotional pain.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a thing. And for 25 years, and certainly in myself, I have watched, there seems to be these pockets that we kind of stuff or put away or sweep under the carpet, our emotional pain. And it starts from early age, right? We have betrayals and frustrations, things that didn't work out in life, grief, loss, heartbreak. There's actually even a syndrome called the heartbreak syndrome, with broken heart syndrome. But the problem is most of us have never been taught what to do about that when we I imagine you've seen similar things. What have you noticed?
Absolutely. Well, just listening to you in the beginning, the word that came to me is that's life, right? That's life. Stuff happens. We are these imperfect beings with soft sides and tender sides and conditioning, and we're showing up in relationship with other people, and we are showing up, putting ourselves out there, and pain happens, hurt happens. And to further what you said, I agree wholeheartedly. I've seen this in myself, having grown up just get it done, right? We just need to kind of suck it up and move on. So what happens, is we sweep things under the carpet. We haven't been equipped with the tools, and we are in these busy lives trying to get things done. So we feel like we don't have time to deal with our emotions, and so we just whether you call it stuffing it, ignore it, and push through the pain. Facing it we weren't taught that. Many of us weren't taught that. I know I wasn't. And then the other thing too I wanted to bring up is or we were taught it's wrong to have these emotions, right? Like you're wrong to feel hurt. It's a silly thing. Why do you feel so hurt? Why are you so upset about that? That's no big deal, right?
Right.
And so further unequipping us, right, to not know how to deal with this as we grow up and get older.
Exactly. And it's almost like we've become so accustomed to living with it and having it sort of be in this background or, somewhere unconscious, that we tend to think it's the way it is. It's like normal. And it is not natural. It's common, but it isn't natural for us to operate that way. And I think it's coming up now in this particular time in human history because I think people are starting to recognize that it's important to tend to our emotions. And, before we go on any further and talk about, how intense it is, I just want to say that while it feels really scary, and I understand that, and I know everybody I work with, I can watch them sort of shaking in their boots, so to speak. But honestly, once we just sort of move ourselves through it with as much, I don't know, grace, maybe just do it. It doesn't even matter if it's ugly or messy or not graceful, but just tending the idea that we walk through it it just dissipates the intensity of it. We realize, oh, it's not as bad as I thought, There's a line in the book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, the South American guy. And I'll never forget having read this, and it goes, the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. Yeah. So it's almost like we're finding our way to just turn to the thing, whatever the emotional thing especially when it keeps coming around. That's a sign that it's really
Yes.
ready
Yes.
to leave.
Yes.
And if we just turn to it instead of run from it or shove it, like you said
Right.
earlier,
Right.
it changes everything.
It does change everything. And I know we're going to dive in a minute into some very key things that we want our listeners and our watchers to think about, and how they have been showing up, and how they can start to alchemize those situations. One thing I wanted to add to this problem that we've been kind of, look at it as like a tornado, right? But you're not in the eye of the storm where it's calm. You are the one swirling around, right?
Way to say it. Yeah. It's so true.
And so what I've seen in my life, and people I've worked with over the years, and friends and family members, I don't want to, it's a big common thing that how we show up is we look at the circumstance, we look at who it was, we look at what it was, and we put all the energy on that, what was out there, right? Mm-hmm. And so the emotional pain that we experience, we don't just experience it once, we continue to experience it every time we're in that similar situation, or every time we see that person, or we're with our friends, and we want to get support. We need support, but a lot of times what that support looks like is a bitching session, right? Or someone I can come and once again talk about how I was wrongly treated, and how whatever, men or corporate America or my mother or whoever it is, right? We don't realize how we are continuing to deepen the trenches of that emotional pain by continuing to talk about it, bring it up, relive it.
Right. So right.
Facing it, right? So culturally, even, it's, we get together and we have a glass of wine or a cup of tea, and this isn't me anymore. I absolutely refuse to do this unless it's something I'm constructively doing. But how do we continue to fester in that tornado of, oh, woe is me, right?
So true. Yeah, that is so brilliant that you brought that up, because a lot of times people don't really understand like laws of energy, principles of the mm-hmm. universe. And when we have an unresolved emotional pain, we tend to sort of pile more on top of it. And it creates like I see it in my mind's eye, like a energetic plug-in, like when we put a plug into the wall plug,
okay.
We have this plug-in for whatever that emotional pain is. And it, energy that's just, moving through the airwaves, moving through our life, it just plugs into that until we resolve it, until we look at it and we tease it out. And that's not as hard as we think it is. It seems like it is. Right. And then that healing dissolves it. So there's no more place for the energy to plug in. Right. And when we don't do that, then we end up being angry and fearful, and we feel like a victim. And it just keeps us kind of catch-22, just constantly spinning in our life.
Constantly spinning. Well said. Yes, absolutely. And before we walk into what is our heart really desiring, there's one last thing for me that I'd love to bring up, and that is sometimes when we've had that hurt, we can move it into what we think is good energy by saying, I just need to be better, right? So I'm going to be more motivated. I'm going to be more a better, whatever, speaker, coach, mom, whatever that might be. And so we actually almost swing too far the other way, not play the victim, but we overcompensate, and we feel like we have something to prove. Like, mm-hmm. I'm going to prove that I am better. And so what happens is we overwork, right? We overachieve to try and offset that hurt that we're still harboring. And it could have been one comment that somebody made, right?
Yeah, no, that is a good point. It's, I guess that pendulum swinging too far one way or the other is the good analogy, when really it's always the middle road we're looking for. And in that middle road is true healing. That's where we literally we release the pain instead of compensate for it.
Yes.
It takes a lot of energy. And I don't know about you, but the older I get, the less energy I have, the less reserves I have to do overcompensation like that. So it's almost like it's been a forced middle road path. Like, okay, I'll just do the work now because it takes less energy.
It's less energy. Like there's some wisdom coming up with that statement for sure.
Exactly.
So we've been, I think, doing a great job painting this picture of all the ways that we, haven't dealt with our pain and how that shows up in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And what does our heart really desire, right? What do we really, as a whole being, want?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, some people never even ask that of themselves. And I know I can speak for myself personally, and I've heard this over and over from different women, is that there's this yearning to flow and to sort of be like in Chinese medicine. The design of human emotions is that they flow through us. They don't get stuck and take up residency in us. They just flow. It's normal to have anger, it's normal to have grief, but not for us to in an ongoing relationship with that. It's about that flow. And if so, that's one of the things I know our heart desires, is to just appreciate the humanity of an emotion,
Mm-hmm.
and not put it as a stake in the ground, so to speak. um,
Right.
yeah, anyway, that's one thing I can think of as we start to
Yeah.
talk about this
No,
part.
and that flow is, our heart does desire. I agree. And I've seen that shift in myself
Mhm.
to experience it and to face it and to sit with it and see what's maybe behind it and then let it flow through us, right? We, and I don't want to take us back, but we get stuck because we judge something so much, right? We judge what we're feeling, we judge an experience, and then that we clomp onto that, and that's where the suffering starts to happen.
Right.
So
And that's a small mind or ego-based viewpoint, right?
right,
And
right.
one of the things that I've really started to feel in this flow and this desire, what I know my heart desires, is asking my ego to be the co-pilot and not the pilot. So, and
Yes, if I've done that,
oh
yes.
my gosh, it works out so much better. And it's almost like that ego mind that we all have. And I'm not going to make that bad or good. It's part of
Right.
the human experience. But it isn't designed to run the show. And when she learns how to surrender to higher wisdom, to source, to our heart, she actually finally realizes sort of a relief, like, oh, this is so much better this way.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, and I love that you refer to her as a she, and sometimes that ego can be that little girl in me who's afraid,
Mhm.
and we've been, and like you said earlier, not realizing the state we've been in. So many of us, I believe, are living in fight or flight.
Totally.
We don't realize it. It's just become how we operate every single day,
Autopilot.
right?
Yep.
So our ego, our just our adrenaline, our like everything, cortisol levels, everything's just amped
Yeah.
up. And
Yeah.
if we're not taking that time to pause and listen and fully feel those emotions, right? So our ego, I love that analogy. I definitely have made a beautiful relationship with her, and that my divine self, which is that natural essence, and I talk about radiance a lot, and as I connect with my inner self, my higher self, my soul, and let her step to the forefront, honor and listen to what she's saying, then I can turn to my ego and say, you know what, we've got this, right? Like, we totally have you, we will keep you safe. At the same time, we need to fly a little bit, and we
Yeah.
can't fly if we're tethered to all these old emotions. So
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. And it's a subtle shift from being like really self-critical, which a lot of women and people are, but
Mm,
switching that self to compassion, like, we've got this, like you just said. That was,
yeah,
and that requires self-compassion. Even the Buddha said, if your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. And we talked about this in our last episode, this idea of permission. We have to give ourselves permission, I believe, to reach for compassion when we most need it.
yeah.
And alchemizing criticism into compassion is a beautiful start. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful start. And just judgment falls under that same idea,
Right.
choosing acceptance over judgment, like what
Right.
I am, who I am in all of my beautiful imperfections right now is okay. It's
Oh,
acceptable. It's
yes.
lovable. I'm worthy. And what next, source?
Right. Right. And when we do all of that, we open ourselves up to this place of living every day with more trust, right?
Yeah.
We'll trust that everything's going to work out. Trust that I'm okay. Trust that what's going on in front of me is for my good. And when you start to live from trust, then your life becomes a lot easier.
Totally.
That again, that flow, right? So that ease and grace and flow happens. You feel more peace, and it's a beautiful like unfolding of then you're in the eye of the storm. You're not in the swirling of the
As the
sea.
center calm point,
You're in
as the zero point.
point.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this is a design. We're designed to blossom ourselves this way. We don't reach out for trust off a shelf and go, okay, I've got it now. We build it over time by, baby steps, sometimes, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And then we can wake up and go, you know what, I trust this day will unfold in the way it's designed to. And
Yeah.
it will be good.
And it will be great. It will be perfect, right?
Even as things are off track or whatever happens.
Right, right, exactly. So many fun serendipitous stories, and I hope as we get into our next couple, creativity will probably be a great place to start talking about some of the serendipities that happen. And yeah,
Christy, do you mind if we remind our listeners who we are? So
exactly.
Laurie Morse, author of Reverse Your Heart Disease Naturally, and Christine and I are coming together and offering this 4-part these episodes, 4-part series, in order to help you access your heart, find your radiance, and really blossom who you are meant to be in this life. And I'll let you say your thing.
And yes, thank you, Christine Howard. And I really support and guide and inspire women that have said yes to listen to their heart's calling or their soul calling, to do it with grace and ease and joy and flow. And in doing that, they become more of their radiant self, exactly what you said, Laurie. Or women that are stuck and there's something they want to start and they haven't started it yet. That is just opens my heart to support women that are ready to take that stand for themselves. And I am a coach, speaker, and author. I am not a therapist. So as we segue into this next section and have some great tips and suggestions for everybody, really want to reiterate that, your mental, physical, spiritual well-being is your responsibility. I am not speaking as a therapist, giving you anything therapeutic here. I am speaking from a perspective of tools and techniques that have worked for myself, that work with my clients, that are empowerment and awareness and growth techniques that can move you to blossom to the highest version of yourself.
Yeah, and that's perfect. As a health coach and a practitioner of Chinese medicine, I always tell people, take what resonates and leave what doesn't, and take personal and self-responsibility for your journey, because it is a journey. And while you can gather guides and support along the way, it really is ultimately a personal journey. So thank you for remembering that.
You're welcome. So let's shift into our nuggets here, right? We painted a good picture of what the problems with our emotional pain and what our heart really desires or what our soul desires for us. So how do we get there? How do we get to stepping into that, alchemizing that pain and really stepping into that full version?
Well, do you want to talk about being a good director of your thoughts, or do you want me to do that?
Yeah, I think that would be perfect.
Okay. So, most of us know that we have free will, right? We're on a planet of free will choice. It kind of falls under that idea of self-responsibility. And one of the things I've learned over the years is that the right use of will, the right use of free will, is being a good director of our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs. Now, I get it. That can be really hard sometimes when it feels like our feelings are a tsunami or, an ocean of just intensity. And I really, really do get that. I personally have come to the place where I can't do alchemizing of my emotions without my partnership with source or with the divine, because that's actually where the alchemy truly happens. And if now's a good time, I'd actually love to share the definition of alchemy in the dictionary. It is like a medieval forerunner of chemistry. Before they had chemistry, it was based on the transformation of matter and usually lead into gold. So in drawing from ancient wisdom for modern times, today the word alchemy is used for the idea of transformation, and it's used for transfer energy into I'll say lighter energy, but that lighter energy is really a representation of who we really are. It's like more of like that flow instead of the stuckness. So we're using the word alchemy so that we're as a way of just, talking about how to move energy from stuck and old and dense into free, into being a liberated experience of ourselves. And so, and I just love that word alchemy.
I do too. I do too. Well, and one thing you said when you talked about, I thought of light, right? And the more we transform and let go of these old stories and these old hurts and these old stuck emotions, it is a lightening of the load, and it is a lightening of our spirit, where we now are, I think you feel physically lighter, but we are a light being, right? We shine. People say, what's changed? What's changed? New hair, new, just new outfits. And it's no, I literally am a light being, and I've just let go of so much stuff that I can just shine my natural radiance, right?
And you do. I mean, it's
heart to heart. Yeah,
exactly. Heart to heart. And that's our design, right? Like, oh my gosh. And we all ache for that, but we just feel like there's this sort of like, I don't know, cesspool or swamp in the way of where we are and where we want to be. There's two things based on what you just said I'd love to sort of bring in. One is that when we release energy and we welcome a lightness of being, one of the things I adore reminding myself of is that the entire fabric of the universe is love. And so what actually takes the place of our old energy and our old emotional pain is a version of love. And there is nothing a human being wants more than that. So, and we're not talking about romantic love or, we're talking about the love that is who we are, right? That's really knocking on our door, our heart, our mind, so to speak, to say, hey, I'm here. Can you please let me in? And then the other thing is, if something is coming up, if there's a pain or an old emotion or that thing that's coming around again, it wouldn't be coming up if it wasn't ready to be released. If you are consciously aware of it, it means it's ready. And you may need more tools or some support in order to do that work. But to the degree that you can help yourself remember that it's not going to hurt you, an emotion is only energy, and energy cannot hurt us. Right? Like emotions cannot hurt us. If you really just sit with yourself with the next thing that comes up, just to sort of do this exploration, like, well, will it really hurt me? You'll see it really won't. Yeah. And then you can learn and sort of teach yourself that it's up. So it's ready. It's coming around for me, for my liberation, for release, in order so that I may receive more of who I am, which is the love that I am. So
I love that perspective, and I love it's such. I think that if anybody walks away with one nugget out of this whole today's episode, is that shift. And I know when I made that shift, talk about taking a load off my shoulders, because it was like a prime opportunity in this moment. Like I was being gifted something that can move me forward, right? So when I shifted that perspective, this isn't here to hurt me, to hold me back or whatever. It's an opportunity for me to grow, right? So you start making that perspective shift. I'm like, okay, I'm growing, I'm growing, I'm growing, I'm growing. And yeah, things feel uncomfortable at times, but then you start building that muscle of what it feels like to expand in who you're being, how you're showing up in the world and going for these things that are really calling to your heart. It is hugely transformational.
Oh,
So,
true,
um,
Christine. Yeah, that is just so true. And oh, there was something I was going to say about that, and it's just leaving my mind right now. But oh well, we
maybe
can.
I'm sure it'll come back up. It'll come back up. So, furthering on from what you were saying and what I was sharing is that perspective shift, right? So, I love saying this to my kids, and I've said this to girlfriends, and I remind myself, like, pain is inevitable,
Mhm.
suffering is optional,
Mm,
right?
yes, yes.
So to be in that place of awareness and say and ask yourself, within a situation, especially if it repeats, that is a sign that you're stuck in something. And am I suffering here? Do I feel I'm suffering? And I used to say this word out loud: I am suffering here
Mm,
with things that were going on in my life. And I'm like, okay, this is a sign. So shift the perspective that pain is part of the process, but you don't have to suffer. That's where you get to make the empowered choice to then do something different.
exactly. And we mentioned earlier just turning toward the thing that it feels to us like the cause of our suffering inside of us, not externally. You already mentioned that, which was the
Inside,
first.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
inside of us, and accessing with the help of your heart, your soul, your higher wisdom, with spirit, whatever whatever way you address that energy,
Right.
and softening it, it literally changes the relationship and it changes from suffering to an empowerment. And that's where the empowered choice comes in, because
Right.
we get to choose differently. And honestly, I feel like it's way much. I have way more suffering when I don't do this work than when I do, because it's really painful to be stuck in emotions. It's
It is
hard.
it
It's
is.
not always easy to do the work, but it's harder to not do the work.
Right. And right. You have a couple of those experiences of doing the work, and then you start to realize, oh boy, and it does
Yeah.
build. I don't want to go there again. I don't want to show up that way again. It's very disempowered. I don't like how I feel for me, I felt out of alignment with my authentic self. I felt inauthentic in how I was showing up. And you could tell people, like, let's be honest with ourselves. We know something's off. Even if we're not stopping to look at it, there's a part of us that will never forget our essence. And even if it's just that feeling of, yeah, something's not right here,
Yeah,
right? And you don't
exactly.
have to get hit with the 2x4.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
um,
And if you consider, if we, all of us, consider ourselves conscious beings, this is what it means to curate consciousness, which is
mm,
to literally be a curator of our thoughts, our feelings, our words, and our actions. And that there's hardly any better work to do for the remainder of our life. That's how I see it. Like,
I
this is.
love that. No, I love that. I love that. Well, and the other thing that came up for me in this conversation is that related to the consciousness, we can get so focused on that minute, the situation, right? And we can replay people's words. We can replay exactly how everything unfolded. We're so close to such a small thing in our life. Take
Yes,
a step back, right?
good
Take a
point.
step back and look at all of your life, and not just the situation, not just the place where you're feeling hurt, angry, or a victim. Step back, look at the whole canvas of your life, right?
Right.
And what can you be thankful for? What is going right? Where are you in power? Where are you not in power? When I know, again, this is something I'm not saying anything I haven't done for myself.
Me neither. Yeah.
And the one of my mentors helped me to take a step back and, like, put your whole life on a movie screen, right? And when I did that, and I could see myself in the ego, in the scared place, I could see myself in the timid place, I could see myself in trying to grasp and control or justify things. It was so much easier to observe myself then and expand that consciousness than when I was up here in close in front of the painting, right? So step back, take a take an hour off and step back from your life. And
exactly. And it reminds me of one of my spiritual teachers. She said, there's nothing wrong. And when she said that, I realized that I have been operating as if something is wrong. The world, the situation, the emotion that's coming up. And when I shifted that from there's something wrong to, well, and I say what if, because sometimes it's really hard to say there's nothing wrong when that mind will go, well, yes, there is. And let me show you what, anyway. So if I say, well, what if this is actually in right order or in exactly what I need for this moment, and do what you said, just take a step back and kind of, I try to see my mind fill up with a little more light. And I ask that I be shown what is right and true here in whatever the situation is. And I almost to be shown that. And it may not be right away, but at some point. And then I'm sure you've had this experience, as probably we all have if we are over the age of 20, where you can look back and go, oh, that actually worked out better than I thought it would. And my underwear was all up in a bunch about it,
Absolutely.
Like, note to self, just kind of chill through the experience.
Right. That goes back to the trust and the being in the flow. And we, although we are so intelligent, there's so much more that we don't know. We can't see that. Again, source, God, life is trying to organize for us. Yeah. So when we open our hearts to release this pain, to allow more of our natural essence to come out, right? And our life is going to take on a whole different picture than we can ever imagine.
It's true. And just so that you, as a listener, are clear that we can relate to being in the pain, both of us can.
Yes.
The stuff we're talking about may seem a little out of reach, but what I can tell you is that even as intense as a painful or emotional shackling may feel at the time, our wisdom, the love that we are, the divinity that we reach for is so much more than any pain that we could actually be living through on any level from A to Z. So I think it's important to just remind ourselves that. And I try to remind myself of these truths when I'm not in the midst of a storm, because it's really hard to reach for those things when I am in the midst of the storm. I mean, I make lists of things to remind myself when I'm in the midst of a storm. Oh yeah, so that I can just reach for whatever will work, and so I can stay present and conscious with moving through the emotion,
Right.
So anyway, just so everybody knows that we are we're just like you.
Perfectly imperfect, doing our best at every moment, right? And
exactly.
With love, compassion, non-judgment, to the best of our ability, and continuing. So let's say somebody's ready, like, okay, I'm ready to start facing some of these things that I've stuffed. I do want to alchemize this. I do want to live a higher life. And they're ready to start on their journey. What types of obstacles do we want them to be aware of as they start that journey? Yeah.
Well, we said it earlier, there probably will be a fear of your emotions. Your mind will make you want to run for the hills, and just be aware of that, because that's how it goes for all of us until we do that. Oh wait, I'm just going to stop, and I'm going to turn, and I'm going to face, this is all an internal, face that thing.
Right.
And then you realize that it isn't the boogeyman that it seems like it is, right?
Right.
Yeah,
beautiful.
So,
and I think too, people can, I was thinking of this analogy as I was prepping, that they've been stuffing things in the closet for so long. It's that extra closet, that broom closet or the coat closet that's not overflowing, and they're afraid. Yeah, when I open the doors, like my life is going to come crashing down.
Totally, and it's going to crush me.
I don't even want to start it.
I write about that in my book.
Yeah. Exactly. Or then kind of taking it one step further is, you know what, I'm so broken. I have too much stuff. It's too late for me. This is just who I am. right?
Exactly. Oh, I hear women say that all the time. Oh, that's just my personality. I'm just a worrier. That's just how it is. But
Right.
that's definitely falls into that category we talked earlier about. Well, that's the autopilot. That's the habitual patterning that's been created. It may be really common for you, but it isn't your natural state.
Isn't right. And I do want to emphasize that again, because as we continue to put our message out, and other women are supporting other women to do this, we have that divine state that's been clouded over with conditioning and these hurts and these things.
Yes.
And then we have our divinity and our natural essence and our soul and our heart that really wants us to live our fullest life. So to really start to come to terms that who you are in this moment is on that journey toward being this expressed version of who you in your, in your heart is. So see that you're on a journey, that you're only this because that's who you're defining yourself to be now. Right. So exactly. I really want to hit that with everybody today.
No, that's perfect. And that's a good analogy as we peel off and untangle and, throw off those cloaks and all that stuff. We literally walk ourselves into union with our divinity. And when that happens, we'll get glimpses of it, and then we'll go back, and then we'll be like a little closer. And, this is like what a life is designed to do, is to come together in this union, in this community. And when we live more from this state, there's joy. I mean, there's way more joy than pain. And that is really what a heart desires. If we have
beautiful description. I feel the joy, and I feel that. So another obstacle, I want to toss this out, is someone said, I just don't know where to begin, right? Yeah. What is that right first step? And there is no right step. There is a step. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, the seduction of the mind is that we have to find the perfect thing, the perfect program, the perfect, book, whatever, the perfect next. And honestly, whatever is present is our work to do next. That's our next step. And we won't ever have the whole journey laid out in front of us so that we can see, oh, that looks safe down there. It's really just the next step.
Right. And I did want to toss out a couple thoughts that had come to me too, was that next step could be, I'm calling my friend and saying, all right, I need your support. It could be, I'm pulling out my journal and I'm just pouring out everything. It could be, I'm calling a therapist. It could be,
I'm going to take a walk around the block, and I'm going to bond with this tree or what. I'm going to buy myself flowers. I'm going to listen to my heart. And if there's something that presents itself that could this, whether it is a book or a program or a coach or whatever, that, our heart is what is guiding us for the resonant yes, the empowered yes, the empowered choice, rather than the grasping for it to make it go away, right? There's a difference between the two.
Right. Yeah. Shift to that place of listening. Okay. So what are some of the other obstacles?
Well, the other one I was going to throw in is the absolute fallacy that there's not enough time to do this.
Tired of hearing that.
I know, there isn't time to not do this work. Mm-hmm. Like everything a person does in her life, a woman will do in her life, is to come to the place of doing this work. Mm-hmm. So in my view, it's like, well, why don't we just do it now? Why don't we just come to that place now rather than all the...
And we can do it in, gosh, this just came to me. We can do it without it. You don't have to abandon your whole life. And I will say this was huge for me when I started my journey. I felt that, and I was at a breaking point with what was going on with my divorce. I felt like facing it, like my whole life is going to be wiped out, and I'm going to have nothing that resembles my life at all anymore. And it was nothing further than from the truth, right?
Yes.
And so we can start to peel layers back, and maybe it's, where am I out of integrity and harboring pain in how I'm doing my self-care? Mm-hmm. And what can I do? What's presenting itself right now? What would be one step for that, right? Yeah. Take time to take one shift. It could be any area of your life, right? So it doesn't have to be a complete life makeover. We're not doing extreme makeover here where you go in for a week and you walk out and nobody can even recognize you anymore, right?
It isn't that a scary prospect, and nobody is saying that's how this is going to roll. It's
Right.
really just the one breath at a time, being
Yeah.
consciously aware, oh, this piece is up. Let me see what I can do. Let me do my best with it. One of the most juicy ways of alchemizing emotion is through the natural inborn element that we all have, which is accessing our creativity, which we're going to in the next episode.
Excited for that
So
episode.
maybe you're thinking, what's that?
I'm excited for that episode.
Oh, I know. I mean, oh yeah. It's going to be hard to keep it to, 30 or 40 minutes. But anyway, there's just, you were mentioning call a girlfriend.
Right.
Just take a breath, reach for gratitude. If all you have is just saying, I'm going to look around from where I am right now, and I'm just going to be grateful for something, even if it's a color that you like, because you can't find anything else. Switching on gratitude, which is a vibration that is as close to love as any vibration gets, is very, very helpful. So if that's the only thing you take away, it will gift you.
Beautiful suggestion. Beautiful suggestion. And going back to the girlfriend comment, a lot of women may say, I don't have support, right? My spouse doesn't support me. My children don't support me. My family won't get this. Find support. There's, with the power of the internet and connected via social media, and there's so many different meetup groups and coaches abound, or groups and classes online. Find something. There's always something. Don't let that, not the fact that you don't have support now, then that's your next step.
Exactly right.
Something, and someone for you.
Exactly. If that's what you feel, just like what you can put your hand to your heart and just have an honest conversation with your higher wisdom and say, I feel like I don't have any support. Can you guide me to some support? And then watch how deliciously that happens for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Beautiful. And the last piece that I want to say is this whole concept of deserving, right? And like owning your divinity, being compassionate, and as if you were talking to a best friend, right? We talk to a best friend and we believe in them, we encourage them, we support them, but we're not doing that for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? So you deserve this. It's not a luxury. It's a natural born right. You have to live your fullest life and to be that healthy, whole, happy, joyful person.
Right. Exactly. Thank you so much for bringing that in, because that's a big piece. And honestly, it sounds a little cliche, but when I started accessing the number one relationship was with divine love, and I see her as an archetype, like a divine mother kind of thing. And I talk to her like she is literally sitting next to me as my best friend. I tell her what I feel, what I'm looking for, all that stuff, like we do our best friends. I sometimes have wine with her. It is really, honestly, the most supportive and empowering relationship that can be cultivated as a human being. Mm-hmm. So, and we deserve that. That is really our design. So I'm so grateful you brought that up, Christine.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I know we have a call to action for
yes.
our viewers today. And would you like to go ahead and share what?
Sure. Yeah. So last time we gave you links to, and Christine will talk about her app again, but I gave you a link to the complimentary copy of the book, which is devoted to cultivating a healthy heart, which is fully about the emotional piece, not the whole thing, but chapter 9. So if you want to take on a call to action, it would be to read chapter 9, and then you can do some journaling, which now Christine can talk about.
Yes, absolutely. So in my app, which is the Radiant Achiever, and there will be links to
yes.
to download that app. In the app has a feature for a journal. And I will write a question. You look for a journal entry labeled Alchemizing Emotional Pain. And in there, you will have the opportunity to face some stuff, right? And I'll break it down to several parts so you can have some nice questions, thought-provoking questions, and then just write what's on your heart. And you can come back and add to it and revise it over time. But pausing your life, right? Saying, yes, I'm drawing a stake in the ground. I am going to step into fuller version of me. I'm willing to let some old things go. And journaling is a beautiful place to take one next step, along with reading the book. These are very uplifting, empowered choices that you can make.
Totally, and easy to do. And even if you just say, I'll just take 5 minutes a day, the mind it's hard for the mind to say, no, I'm not going to give you 5 minutes. If we say, I'm going to sit down and meditate for an hour, then there's a lot of pushback, right? But if we take 5 minutes a day and you realize how nourishing that is and how fueling that is to your higher self, then it'll be a little easier to take maybe 10 a couple times a week. And then you just let it unfold organically. But download the app, read the chapter that is specific to alchemizing emotions. And unless you have anything else, Christine, then I would say we'll see you next time in the next episode for cultivating creativity, which you have. If you're breathing, you have it.
Bye for now, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.